Hey, welcome back to The Long Game. We are on a mission to demystify the science that shapes our lives and to unpack how great ideas, built here in Scotland, connect to the wider world of medicines, devices, and new companies at the cutting edge of life sciences. Hey everybody, I'm Ross Kagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at the University of Glasgow.
And hello everyone, I'm Sandy Weir, Tech Innovation Leader and Strategic Program Manager, joining you from Edinburgh.
Well, last week we discussed how AI is already saving the NHS time and money by automating admin and supporting virtual wards. That was actually a fun chat. Today we're moving out of the hospital back office and into that part of AI that still feels a little bit like science fiction. AI that can help design drugs, write new biological tools, and even run experiments in the lab.
Yeah, we're talking about the sort of truly mind-blowing applications of AI in biology, Ross. We're moving past the AI to read X-rays, and we're looking at how algorithms are physically reinventing how we approach drug discovery, creating new molecules, mapping the human body in virtual reality, radically shrinking the time it takes to get a drug to market.
Yeah, exactly. And as you remember, Sandy, we've already talked to Ankasine in a previous episode. And even since we've spoken to Ishani, I feel like cancer vaccines have become the thing, really exploded. So we're a little bit on the front edge of that. This time I want to expand our lens beyond that software, where we can take a quick tour of what AI is doing, this time around the world, because it's always important to keep our eyes on what everyone else is doing. And then you can bring us back into one of my favorite topics, digital twins. We should probably get Andrew Bianca back on this as well, where AI lets us test ideas inside a virtual version of the body before we ever go near a patient. And let me say that after this, we were just discussing, we think we're going to have a third episode to sort of round all this out, and we're going to really talk about virtual versions of not just the body, but of the mind, as we really explore what's coming in the horizons of AI. But for today, Sandy, put on your sausage roll. I always say that, and I'm always the one who's eating the sausage roll. Put down your sausage roll, and let's have a chance to let's talk about AI, not from the admin standpoint, but for what it can actually do for patients.
Yeah, Ross, I thought you'd actually forgotten to mention the sausage roll today,
Never.
and I was going to sneak in with my own. But no, I love that. I love that. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's such an exciting space, and Ross, last week you mentioned about the challenges of hallucination when we're looking at AI and drug creation. What does that actually mean? Can you give us a little bit of insight and it kind of expand on what we talked about last week?
Yeah, well, I might have been going a little bit further dramatic, just like my sausage roll. So we all know, I think everybody knows what AI hallucinations are. So you ask AI, your large language model, you ask it a question and you get wrong answers back. We've all been there. In fact, apparently I published many more papers than I had realized, as it made a whole bunch of them up, which was very impressive. But in drug discovery, weirdly, this is actually useful. What hallucinations, loosely speaking, in drug discovery means is that AI can generate new possibilities. This is where all of this sort of unexpected aspects of it, that actually can be a real advantage. So it's not just copying from an existing catalog, but creating something truly new. And actually, my lab works with AI in drug development along with Lee Cronin's lab, and we have seen this up front and personal, and it's kind of wild, actually. So traditionally, drug discovery starts with you have a big library of compounds, okay? And just very quickly, for those who are not into the lingo of this, let me just mention that compounds means it's not FDA approved, and it is a compound until it gets FDA approved, something I had to learn when we first got into this. And then you set up a screen, you screen them, and you hope that, that at least one of them does something useful. AI can change that in that it can actually sort of learn the grammar of the biology and the chemistry, put them together, and then suggest a molecule that's really never existed before, but should, in principle, fit a disease target based on the parameters that you gave it. Now, the key here is in principle. So it spits out a lot of things. And I think my favorite analogy for this is um, when there's an old saw about somebody looking at a Jackson Pollock painting. You remember those? I don't know if remember's the right word, but you've seen those.
Yeah.
Um, and, uh, and the old saw, which is that somebody says, I could get a monkey to do this. And the comeback, of course, is, yeah, but you're the one who decides when the monkey stops. And that's exactly it with AI as well, right? So it throws out a bunch of stuff, really potentially clever stuff, and also some nonsense. And then the key thing is that we step in and say, all right, this is all nonsense, but this one is really interesting. And this is, I think, really how AI and humans in 2026 pair quite nicely, which is that we're the gatekeepers for its ideas, kind of like a brilliant but crazy young PhD student who's, just amazing, but not everything that comes out. And I'm, speaking from experience. So it doesn't remove the need for us, for chemists, biologists, clinicians, and of course, things like safety testing, all that, which is downstream of all this. But it basically allows you to make surprising leaps much faster. And so I just want to remind everyone that we're talking about hallucinations and things like that. So it gives us better starting points. As I mentioned, we have some experience with this, and I have found it really, really very helpful.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Ross. And I love the analogy with the Jackson Pollock masterpieces. That's a really good analogy. But tell us, how is this actually playing out in Scotland? What's happening here? What are we doing here as part of this story?
Yeah, well, we are doing some things that certainly I and others are here, but let's start by going a little bit global. I'll start with London, with Google DeepMind, also isomorphic laboratories. I think some of you are in the field, most of you in the field know about this story, but AlphaFold really was a huge breakthrough in all of this. And I think it turned a lot of heads, including mine, on what was possible with AI.
Mm.
So AlphaFold first showed that AI could actually predict the shapes of proteins, something that humans have been at forever. Now we're up to AlphaFold 3. This really takes that concept much further. It can model how proteins interact with DNA, RNA, small molecules, very importantly, ions, other parts of the cell. So in plain English, what this means is that AI is basically moving from drawing out a single molecule to really modeling interactions between different molecules, drug, target, this sort of thing.
Hmm.
In the past, we've tried to do this with what we call virtual docking. This is a whole different level and is without question going to revolutionize how we do drug discovery, with a caveat that I'll get to, because I'm going to have a little bit of a rant about that. But so the reason that this is important is that disease is rarely caused by one molecule just hanging out. It's caused by complex interactions, one protein binding another. Then you have a drug entering a pocket, maybe an antibody recognizes an antigen, and so on. So if for us, certainly for me, to try to keep track of all of this is insane. Okay,
Hmm.
you also have the environmental interaction. It's a lot. But with AI, we have at least the promise, and we're just starting to get the early days of that, of beginning to pool all of this complex interactions together in a sensible way. So essentially, we're creating a drug discovery map. Um, so I just want to say very quickly my little rant on that. I've got to keep all this very short because I could go on and on about this forever. The weakness to this is that, in my opinion, we're not using AI for what it's powerful for, which is those hallucinations. Many chemists consider that to be its downside. And what they really want is they have a target and they want AI to hit that target. In fact, almost all of that, everything I know of that's being done with AI, drug
Hmm.
development does that. But we've always been able to hit those targets. We were slow, it was expensive, but we hit those targets. And the reason we're excited about AI is because that approach basically failed or it didn't succeed very often. We have about a 5% success rate. So all is going to happen if we just keep ourselves to that is we'll have a 5% success rate that's faster and cheaper. So that's better, but it's not really leaning into the power of AI. So that's my little rant about that. And so back to what these companies are doing, and I think there is some acknowledgement of this. So in the US, for example, in silico medicine, there's a really interesting founder. They've taken an AI-designed drug for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. They're already into phase 2. This was made in silico. It's basically, if you don't know what idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is, it's a lung scarring disease. There's really no treatment for it. It's actually surprisingly common. And what's very cool is that AI didn't just design a molecule, but really also helped identify the biological target. So that's sort of a step in between what I was talking about and the C target, hit target. And that really allows AI to link two hard problems. What should we target? And what molecule should we make to target that? So you can see that we're starting to sort of step linearly through that. As I said, I would love to see us sort of go in the opposite direction, top down, but that's coming. So what do you think?
Yeah, and Ross, this is why I love doing this podcast with you, because you open the door to some of the areas that I'm very naive to, and or I lack knowledge in, and I find this world incredibly fascinating. You're using AI in quite different ways from the way that we're using it in radiology and imaging, and I find it really fascinating, and I'm very curious to understand these the companies that you're describing that are using AI to link these two problems, the target and the molecule. How does AI help them to solve that problem?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, and incidentally, thank you for that. And of course, my one of the things I'm most excited about is that you have to listen to my rants. um, so uh, basically, the power of AI, certainly as we're using it now, and I hope I've made my point that I think there is a much higher ceiling to what we can do with it. That, and I think we will get there. But right now, the power of AI is that it basically can gather more data and search through it and make connections a lot faster than we can.
Mm,
So as we're using it now, it is not that its superpowers are not that it thinks differently. Its superpowers are that it thinks faster and bigger in the ways that we do, but bigger. And I'll get
mm.
to some examples of, again, how you can think differently about things. I'll get back to that when we talk about analogies to chess and so on. But there's a lot to be mined in that. So um, the biology and chemistry with AI, you have like almost endless possibilities. We can't wade through all the big data that we're making, and you guys are making some of that big data. But what do you do with it? We've now gotten very good at generating big data, but how do you turn that into a therapeutic? What often happens is you mine it for what you think is important. And that, of course, is throwing away most of the big data and the point of the big data. So you and I have seen a lot of this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, anyway, so a really striking example of taking what we can do and just doing it better. If we jump over to California, there's a company called Profluent. They use AI to design CRISPR gene editing tools called what they call theirs Open CRISPR One. For those of you who, I'm sure almost everybody's heard of CRISPR, but maybe not everybody really understands what it does. It's basically a molecular scissors that you can snip DNA, make a change, put it back together. And what's actually pretty cool about this Open CRISPR One from Profluent is that they didn't just take the enzymes we already have in nature. They actually used AI to design a new and presumably better enzyme to do all of this. That's cool. That's an actual shift. So we're not just discovering biology, we're building new biology. And although that's an early step towards that, you can imagine the worlds that can open up if we free our minds of being limited to what's found in biology. So cancer vaccines, another great example. We already had Ishani from Oncocene talking about this. Moderna and Merck are developing personalized mRNA vaccines for melanoma. So basically, you sequence a patient's tumor, identify the mutations that the immune system is most likely to recognize, and I've actually seen a number of people doing this. And then you make a vaccine tailored to the person's cancer. In the case of BioNTech, you can get as many as I think 20 different antigens they use for the recent pancreatic vaccine. In a melanoma trial, this approach has already been shown to reduce the risk of melanoma returning or the patient dying by almost half, almost 50%, just from the immunotherapy alone, and you know that they're going to make that better. As I mentioned, BioNTech, some of you may know them and Moderna from COVID. They actually were originally cancer companies, and now they've gone back to the well. And BioNTech also reported early promising results in pancreatic cancer, where a very small number, half of them, or nearly half of them, had really long-term stable responses of many years, which in pancreatic cancer is absolutely unheard of. So we haven't solved cancer yet with cancer vaccines. I really love cancer vaccines as a promise. But you can see how AI is just pushing them quickly into the clinics. And we heard from Ishani how important it is to get that data in quickly and get back to the patient.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the things that Ishani really impressed on us was that time scale, and this is the same area that you're describing just now, Ross. So 2 hours to design a bespoke cancer cure, just incredible. And I remember it blew me away when we spoke to Ishani, and I still can't quite get over that time scale.
Yeah.
But what about getting these AI designed drugs approved? That must be a long tail, right? Even after you've taken this incredible step of designing the bespoke cancer cure or cancer drug.
To borrow your line, we should do a podcast on this step.
Mm,
I had a conversation with Owen Sanson about a week ago, and I said, okay, in a perfect world, what's the rate limiting step that's
mm,
been holding us back? And he said clinical trials, how slow they are, and so on. So everything we just talked about has not changed that. You may know that in the U.S. they're actually trialing a sort of real-time reading of clinical trial results and making decisions and switching drugs sort of real time to try to speed all that up. So I
mm.
think that the cost and it takes years to run through clinical trials and tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. It's insane. Like I said, we should do a podcast on it. And of course, AI is not going to change that. If I can just, however, um, really push this idea. I'm going to get on that, and then I'll finish up. And that is, so I was talking about the strengths of AI, but also the weaknesses is us. We are the weakness. And I think a good example of that, maybe I should have brought this up earlier, but here we go. We'll bring it up now. My favorite way of thinking about it, or at least the way I think about it, is the difference between AlphaGo, which was that first program, remember many years ago, that was the
Mm,
first one to beat a chess grandmaster. That was, of course, a huge deal. Now it's like, pff, of course, but at the time it was amazing. So what they did is they trained AlphaGo by giving it, in the end, millions of different chess games that had been played over the years. And it ground through them. And then that's how it learned chess. And then it went and it could outplay humans simply because it could go through all the possibilities better than we could. Very similar to what we were just talking about. See target, hit target, but faster and better. But my favorite is AlphaZero. So AlphaZero, they gave it the rules of chess, but otherwise they didn't give it any games. They let it play itself. And it played billions and I think trillions of games in just a few hours. It's self-trained in about 4 hours. And it crushed AlphaGo. And it crushed any human that got near it. And the openings and so on that it used were simply unlike anything that humans had ever tried before because
mm.
it was unbounded. And so, so that's the end of my rant. But hopefully that's clear on my point, which is let's open these systems up. Let's really lean into their actual strength, which is that they're not human, and therefore they're not biased. And then we are the gatekeepers. We're the ones that tell the monkey when to stop. And I think that it could be a really powerful combination. So let me just finish up. Of course, other things that AI can do, at Carnegie Mellon, they built something called a co-scientist. It's basically a lab in a box. It can read documentation, it can plan chemistry experiments, it can control robotic lab equipment. Um, in one example, at Carnegie Mellon, it planned and basically did complex palladium catalyzed reactions. This is the sort of chemistry that is really a fundamental part of drug development, and it did it all by itself. And we just sort of sat there and watched it. So the future of AI now is not just on a laptop. As we connect it up to robots, it's more difficult to train robots, as you probably know, because we just don't have the training data that we have with language models. But as we hook it up to those robots and so on, we really more and more will be stepping back and become more of a gatekeeper, or even a conductor. We'll set the direction, we'll judge the evidence, we'll get the monkey to put the paintbrush down, and basically make sure that everything makes sense and it does it in a way that's allowed. So I'm going to stop on that. We'll have more time in our next episode to lean into even crazier stuff.
Mm.
But before we even test a drug on humans, AI actually offers new ways to simulate the clinical trial itself, what we had just talked about. So Sandy, tell us about digital twins since you brought it up.
Yeah. No, actually, before I do that, Ross, I mean, just on that topic around the challenge of the kind of long tail around the clinical trials. I mean, really, it's the type of advances that you're describing, which has led to the need for many more clinical trials. We've seen an explosion, particularly in the US, around the number of clinical trials that are being done, and of course, that in itself, because of the overhead, the bureaucracy, etc., around conducting the clinical trials. I should be careful of the use of the word bureaucracy. I mean, it's very important governance is what I should be
Sure.
describing. But it's really that's the limiting factor. But I agree. Let's explore that more and let's gather some more opinions about that. And I think that would make a great
Can I ask you a question on
podcast.
that?
Yeah,
And
of course,
then,
please.
because I'm actually quite curious since you bring that up. A friend of mine, Jeff Smith, many years ago, I was talking with him. I don't know if he was trying to be dramatic, but I actually want to hear your take on this. And he said he thought they should get rid of the FDA. And his take on it was just pay companies if the drug works. And it's going to be too expensive for them to be giving drugs out that aren't working. And the FDA, through all these rules, they only get in trouble if a drug goes through that shouldn't go through, but they never get any negative feedback if they block a drug that should have gone through by making it too expensive and too slow to even bother trying. What do you think of that crazy idea?
Yeah, I do think that's crazy.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
But the main reason for that is because, as I guess we've maybe kind of alluded to before, that drug discovery has really got interesting around individual responses and this precision medicine world. So we've got to be really careful about understanding how we administer those drugs, which patients are likely to be the ones that respond, which aren't, and understand that cohort really, really well. And for that reason, I think putting that in I don't doubt the motives of pharma and trying to create drugs, of course, that are for the common good and the benefit of people, of course. But I think we have to be very careful about how we control administering drugs and understanding who's going to respond. And it's the danger of the negative response that's the key issue. A lot of times these drugs can not necessarily just be benign in the wrong circumstances. They can actually be quite damaging as well. What do you think, Ross? Is that fair?
I think we should do a debate on the
Oh, we
podcast
should
with
do a
this very
debate.
one.
Great. Okay, that sounds good.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I love thinking about it. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah, no,
basically my
indeed.
first reaction was, "That's crazy." Everybody is bad and we cannot cut them loose. But then as it sort of it's wormed its way into my brain, and I thought, yeah, but it is true that there's many, many, many drugs that have never seen the light of day because the price to entry is too high. And we don't think about that because we don't know which ones those are. But anyway, we'll pick that up another time.
Let's pick that up, and let me also tell
Yeah.
you about
No.
a series I've been watching, which is a lot of fun, called Fallout, and it explores the commercial motivations behind a nuclear holocaust. So,
You
you
are
know,
primed to no regulate everything,
no, 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 no,
everybody.
no,
Oh,
no.
yeah,
But it's a
totally.
lot of. I think I found it a lot of fun, and I'll tell you more about it, and maybe that will come up in a future
I
podcast as
love
well.
it.
But you asked me about digital twins,
Yeah.
and I guess I'm an engineer. That's I'm not a scientist, so I love coming back to that engineering challenge and the engineering questions. And the concept of digital twins really emerged predominantly through engineering, aerospace, and product lifecycle management. So its origins are definitely quite far from healthcare. A digital twin is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a highly accurate virtual simulation of some physical object. We really do have a lot to be grateful for from the space race in the 60s and 70s. I guess kind of both of us grew up in that time, and it was hugely
Yep.
exciting. And this is another one of the concepts that we really owe to those guys that were at the heart of that. NASA used ground-based simulators, vehicle models to mirror spacecraft behavior. Most famously, you'll be aware of the Apollo 13 incident. You know the one, Tom Hanks,
I've
Bill
seen the
Paxton,
movie. Yeah.
Kevin Bacon. Great movie. In
It is an
real life, of
amazing movie.
course. Oh, it's a great
100%.
movie.
Heavy recommendation. Yeah.
The reason it's such a great movie is it's a fantastic story, and that kind of real life, incredible story of Jim Lovell and his crew. And gosh, they had a massive challenge getting that crew back to Earth safely. Anyway, afterwards, in the fallout of that, NASA engineers used lots of different models and simulators to diagnose problems, to test survival options, so that they could apply them to the real spacecraft. And this concept kind of evolved over that period and then was formalized through product lifecycle management by the American scientist and business leader Michael Greaves. And I guess that was in the early 2000s. And it was at this time the term we've come known as digital twins. That's when that emerged. But to bring this kind of back home again and to give this a bit of further concept, when Professor Ian Simpson at the University of Edinburgh introduces this topic, he often refers to how Rolls-Royce build digital twins of their jet engines to test failure rates in a computer simulation before they build the physical engine itself. So hopefully that provides some of the context and of what we're actually talking about.
I see. So the idea is to then do this with human organs.
Yeah, and, and that's the really challenging tech transfer, right? And I've kind of been involved in thinking quite heavily
Yeah.
about this problem. Taking this concept from engineering to biology and to healthcare, the problem and the enthusiasm around this is emphatically yes, and this is exactly what's happening. However, as you and I well know, Ross, human biology and physiology is extremely complex, more complex than a jet engine, more complex than a spacecraft. And so this concept, it really needs to be able to scale to that challenge. And the science is starting to make really good progress, and it's doing this by looking at individual organs first. So the pancreas, the liver, and the heart, prime candidates. So, for example, we know that that using AI, scientists are already building virtual models of the human heart, and they use these massive data sets, which involve, include genetics, proteins, and cells, basic understanding of the physiology and the biology of the heart itself. And this means you can generate a model, a digital twin, that you can then use to simulate some heart defect on a computer simulation. You can virtually administer the drug, the virtual drug, and see how it reacts, see how the system reacts. And you can do that without ever going near or touching a patient. It's fantastic. But then I guess at the other end of that scale, you were also seeing examples in healthcare of digital twins. And there's a really interesting example that happened recently at Abertay University. So they just secured £250,000 of funding from the Scottish government to develop a tool called Flow Fusion. And this tool is another digital twin. It's another digital twin technology, but it simulates the internal pressures of the health service. So it lets clinicians test alternative approaches to safety. So it's quite different from the organ-based digital twins that I mentioned already. And in
Hmm.
this case, it's really interesting because Abertay University, if you don't know what they really specialize in, it's games technology, it's maths. So they're using this to design a data-powered digital twin that can model service improvements, operational planning, staff coordination. We're quite far from the sort of drug discovery aspects that we started with. But it's yet another sort of tangible example of how we see digital twins emerging in healthcare and why we can see that this technology is so attractive and can be used and applied to clinical trial design. So I think that's where, I think this is really taking us. It's going to be truly powerful.
Yeah, I see that because, of course, I was thinking of it in terms of doing virtual drug discovery and so on. But I guess with clinical trial design, what you're talking about, for example, is before, say, a patient is even recruited into a clinical trial, you basically run that trial through the digital twins, and you can stress test the idea before people at risk, which would make sense because we just talked about the incredible cost of doing clinical trials, both to the patient and money. So yeah, I would think that that could be really powerful.
Exactly. And another area that I know you're interested in, this has got to be a significant game-changing application of technology for rare diseases, right?
Yeah, actually, that could be transformative, especially for, yeah, as you say, rare diseases, childhood diseases, because one of the challenges that we have is, people often talk about, oh, the challenge is you can't get pharma interested because there's just not going to be enough patients. But actually, not having enough patients is itself a problem when we try to run a trial because you need statistics and so on. You need to select the patients that are most likely to respond, even more so than a more common diseases, because you can't run a trial on 3 patients. I know I've had this conversation. You can't do it, right? Because if you just take 3 people and sit them down for 3 months, 2 of them will get better for no good reason. So actually, this would be really a game changer for rare disease. You can have synthetic generated synthetic controls. Controls, of course, is another big problem, and so on. So yeah, I can see how this really would be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think looking at the rare diseases, childhood diseases, where you've got issues around numbers, I think it's got fantastic application, and we can see companies like Fezi are using AI to build digital patient profiles. They use hundreds of millions of global records to simulate how these rare diseases progress. They're creating digital control groups. So these are virtual control groups. And that really removes, certainly limits the ethical dilemma of giving sick patients a placebo when we know that
Sure.
life-saving drugs exist and would be, game changing for those patients.
No, you're exactly right, Sandy. There's no question about it that AI is going to be, as you say, it's going to be a game changer. It certainly changes the ethics because you can do a lot of things in a virtual system. As somebody who's originally trained as a developmental biologist, I got to see it in terms of its ability to handle complexity, but it'll get there. It's everything is baby steps. So whether the experiment is, a molecule designed in a computer, a virtual organ, a synthetic control arm to a clinical trial, or doing chemistry, driving a robot to make a new molecule overnight. Basically, the standard remains the same. So just to summarize what we've been talking about, does it help us understand the biology? Does it help us make better decisions, right? So it can be really powerful in giving us options, but we're still going to have to be the ones that make the proper decisions. And of course, does it actually help the patient? And I think if it's done well, AI really has the ability to rewrite the rules of biology, as we've talked about. And I hope it's a little clearer now where I come from in all this, which is we really do need to unleash it. And of course, my preference would be to unleash it right here in Scotland. And certainly you and me and others are doing our best to unleash the hound.
Yeah, I mean, it really is important, and we see the pace of innovation. We read every day about new steps and bold steps in AI technology, and we really want to see that translate. And we can see the passion for innovation through the Scottish tech biosector is really strong, and we can see that adoption and the ability to be able to continually embrace these new capabilities in really creative ways to help us keep pace with this change.
Well, Sandy, what also we need to embrace. This has been a great discussion, but it's time for our wee bit of joy. This is a topic, please, everyone, I guess hit that like button, because next week we're going to come back and we're really going to push the bounds. And if Ross is going to rant on about how we need to unleash the hound, let's talk about that. So meanwhile, Sandy, please tell us, what has brought you, my friend, a wee bit of joy this week? I always look forward
Ah,
to your
yeah, no.
installations.
We were talking before we started the pod. It's been a busy week for both of us.
Hmm.
But last weekend I had a lovely time. Ellen and I took another wee trip up north, and I think I mentioned to you that I was going to play at Hopeman Golf Club. First time I played there, never played there before.
How was
Uh,
it?
I thought it was worthy of mention today, and I'm sorry, folks. I have been bringing up a number of these different golf courses I've been playing, and I did hesitate whether to mention this as part of the wee bit of joy today, but I'm going to share it
Hesitate.
anyway.
Sorry to interrupt. You're hesitating bringing up golf courses on the long game?
No. Well, yeah, only because I seem to be doing it very, very frequently, and I should maybe
It's just
even it out a little
bragging.
bit more. I'm bragging again. No, I'm not. But I'm not bragging about how I played. Today, today anyway. I'm bragging about where I played, and we were up in Hopeman. It's a little town right on the Murray coast, northeast of Scotland. People there were hugely welcoming, and I learned something very interesting about the signature hole, the 12th hole on this golf course. So it turns out one of my golfing heroes, a guy called Paul Lawrie, you maybe heard of him, Paul Lawrie, OBE and Open Champion, 1999 at Carnoustie. So it turns out he is also an honorary president at Hopeman Golf Club. And he has described, he's played like, must be thousands of golf courses all over the world. And he has described the par 3 12th on this golf course as probably the best par 3 he's ever played. So, of course, I was really interesting. That's top praise indeed. So let me tell you a wee bit about it. And please understand, I'm leaning heavily into the golf club's own description from their website, but I thought it was really fair as well. So the hole is called the Priashach. It's a particularly spectacular hole. Hope I'm pronouncing the name of the hole correctly. And as you stand on the tee, you're faced with this beautiful panoramic view of the Murray Firth. You can see some fishing boats in the distance. I guess on a nice day, we didn't see any, but I guess on a nice day, you might catch a glimpse of some of the dolphins that we know that are in that area. They're frequently seen around that part of the coast. And the green in this hole, it nestles in the Clashach Cove, just below the tee. So this is it's a relatively short hole. It's only 150 yards. But the green lies quite far beneath you, so it's 100 feet down to the green from the tee, and this is why it's so picturesque and so amazing in this setting. It's the hole's protected by bunkers on the left and the right, and there's a lot of gorse. There's a lot of gorse on this course, and therefore, if you don't get your drive well placed, if you stray off the fairway, you can get into a lot of trouble. So yeah, you don't want to do that. It's a lot of
Don't mess with
gorse,
the
a lot of
gorse. I
heather.
love gorse. It's like my
No, I
favorite
love it.
Scottish
And you
plant.
know, it's in bloom at the moment. So you've got this
Uh,
beautiful scene of these yellow flowers everywhere. So very, very picturesque. And in the course guide, they say that depending on the conditions on the day, almost any club in your bag might be selected. So, so I can imagine if it's windy, it's very exposed. You're basically standing right above the beach. But we were quite lucky. It was a pretty still day, and it was great fun to play. Of course, I totally overhit my ball, and I think the perspective plays tricks on you. You just don't know quite how far it is. So my ball went into the heather on the other side of the hole. I've still got the scratches on my hands from taking my ball out. As a good Scot, I never leave a ball behind that I could otherwise fish out of a tricky situation. Anyway, it was incredible. We both really enjoyed it. Helen played the hole much better than I did, and the view was just incredible. So the next time I play there, and I hope to go back again soon, I'll use slightly less power in my shot, but I'll certainly be going back for not just that hole. Actually, the whole course was really picturesque, and as I said, the people there were really, really welcoming. I thoroughly recommend it. It was a great place to go, Ross.
So somehow, as you talk about too much power, you still manage to brag a little bit. Just a little
It was
bit.
only 150 yards.
Yeah. So my question to you is, and then I'll get to my wee bit of joy, because my sister was she studied at the University of Edinburgh, like, a long time ago. And she always talked about the beauty of the heather and so on.
Oh
I've
yeah.
decided I'm a gorse guy, not a heather guy. Which are you?
Yeah, no, I like the gorse. I like the flowering, and I used to do a lot of camping, wild camping when I was young, and it's much more difficult to start a fire with heather than gorse. So
Fair.
if you're in the wild and you're struggling to get warm, gorse is your friend. Yeah,
Fair.
yeah.
Fair.
But tell us, Ross, bring it back to yourself now. I'm going to give you a challenge to, we somehow need to transition.
Yeah. I can't touch
Please.
that. It sounds amazing.
It's lovely.
Um,
Please tell
so
us about your wee bit of joy.
my little wee bit of joy. So I'll keep this pretty quick. So this past Sunday, my wife Yumi and I, we took our dog Siobhan. Everybody's heard about Siobhan. Took Siobhan, and the three of us went down to the West End to check out the Yardworks Festival at SWG3. And I bring this up because it's maybe my favorite thing in Glasgow, full stop. It happens once a year. So as a New Yorker, I especially love street art. And Yumi does as well. We're often, while everybody else is taking pictures of the Empire State Building, we're taking pictures of the art on the wall. And street art really emerged from New York City, Philadelphia, which I actually lived between New York and Philly. The art scenes back in the 60s and 70s. And having grown up there, I watched things go from just marking initials and so on, and really sort of grow into a full-blown art form. And I have to say, I absolutely love how Glasgow takes street art to a different level, really bringing it almost to a high art. And I've taken almost everybody who comes and visited us. I basically do that tour through Glasgow, looking at the different murals and so on by Smug and all those other guys. It's just, you have to see it. I can't put into words how amazing this is. So anyway, for those of you who are not familiar with Glasgow's SWG3 complex, it's basically an artist colony. And this past weekend, like they do every year, they turned it into a massive outdoor canvas. So huge billboards that go multiple stories up. I will put a bunch of pictures up of the different art that's come there. And what you'll see is somebody sort of raised up on a platform, 2/3 of the way up, and the thing is many-fold higher than they are. So these are enormous works of art. And my younger daughter, who's now in medical school, started as an artist, and she told me that in art, the saying is, if you can't make it good, make it big. And if you can't make it big, make it red. Well, these are both big and red and good. So they sort of check off all of those boxes. Anyway, so it was especially magical this year because it was their 10th anniversary. We've not been here 10 years, but it has. And our dog Siobhan had an absolute blast running through the crowds, checking out the colors. It was a lot of fun grabbing street food there. I'm just kind of strolling through, and the artists are still there working on them, which just makes it even cooler. And we get to yak with them. We bought some art pieces from them. We try to both support the local artists, and we just love some of the art. And sometime I'll show you some of the art that we got. It's pretty cool. So, and what made the atmosphere even more perfect, of course, is the soundtrack. So SWG3 always has DJs and spinning music. They had a couple of DJs that were spinning really killer house music that just kind of worked for the whole thing. They also had an indoor space, which I also like, called the Galvanizer Space. They had a funky market there filled with all sorts of cool retailers. Of course, I bought stuff there because that's just kind of my vibe. We ended up buying some incredibly cheap but fabulous street art to take home. Just, I just love the day. It just makes me smile even thinking about it. It's a brilliant reminder of exactly what I love about Glasgow, which is Glaswegians, we're so connected to the community. We love and respect art in a way that I rarely see in other cities, which is not art as something that's over there, but art that is just part of our everyday life. So this put a smile. This is my wee bit of joy.
Yeah, well said, Ross. I think that's a very cool observation. And yeah, we do love the street art that we see in Glasgow. It is a differentiator. And well, I guess my embarrassment is I don't know enough about the street art scene in Philadelphia and New York to to engage properly on on that. It's something I really need to read up a bit more on.
Let's
But
go
tell
on a
me,
road trip.
yeah, but tell me, you with your passion of street art, this week's been interesting because you probably heard about the statue that appeared in central London by Banksy, right? Did you see
I
that in the
did.
news?
I
What did you
did.
think? What were your thoughts on that?
Um, First of all, is it really Banksy?
Don't know.
That's I guess part of the mystery. I think I don't really have a big thought on that. I know that there was some issues about it being vandalized. Um,
Oh, I didn't hear that. That's
yeah,
tragic.
I think for me the more interesting one is was it the New York Times? I
Hmm.
think so. They had a whole article on we know who Banksy is, and they actually laid him out. And I don't know. I think it's probably Banksy. So my favorite Banksy story. I'm not really answering your question. But my favorite Banksy story is when we were living in New York City, he in Central Park, right near where we lived, he quietly put up a table, put a bunch of his art there, and had some old elderly gentleman sell that art. And people just walked by. One guy bought several pieces for his daughter for her. I think she was going to school in Colorado or something because it matched the color scheme. And I don't know how much that art is worth, but it's got to be absolutely wild. And he bought several pieces for about $60, something like that. Um, and then the story hit, but of course the table was taken away and everything was pushed aside. So
Incredible.
I kind of like the guy's attitude. And I guess the last thing I'll say about that is that his first show, when he had a retrospective of, I guess this was really his first show, was in Glasgow because he said he
Oh.
also liked the vibe of how the people respected street art. And he felt that in the Glasgow, Museum of Modern Art, the GOMA, that
Hmm.
he thought it was appropriate to have his first show there.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. I didn't know that, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's lovely to hear actually. So, so next week, folks, you'll be joining our first new podcast on street art, and no, 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 no. Um, we're not ready to do that. You're probably ready to do that. I'm probably not ready to
I'm
do that.
already writing it in my head.
But that brings us to the end of this second part of our special on AI in healthcare. As you said at the top of the show today, Ross, we definitely want to do another in this series. We're not ready to drop this subject yet. We want to come back and do another one. So hopefully we'll do that again next week. And but thank you very much for listening today. We love the fact you're joining. Please remember to follow us. And yeah, we really want to see some of those analytics improve. Not that we're doing, it's lovely to have all your support.
Yeah, so your support really does mean a lot to us. So until next time, folks, Lang may your lum reek, which I had to look up, and best of luck playing the long game. See y'all. See you, Sandy.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Yeah, see the vision clear. We're here to run the long game. Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game, the long game.